This is Protiviti Legal Perspectives.
Well, welcome to the Protiviti Legal Perspectives podcast series. I'm your host, Chad Volkert, global leader for Protiviti, and looking forward to today's podcast. Very excited to have Amber Schreier, Managing Director for Protiviti's Legal Consulting, with us today. She has deep expertise within the legal industry and with the executive suite. Amber, welcome to the show. Maybe share with our listeners a little bit of your background.
Thanks, Chad. Really appreciate it. It's great to be here. As you mentioned, I am a managing director with Protiviti in our consulting solution with a little bit of a focus on financial services in that industry. I have had the privilege of helping clients in a variety of different areas over the years, particularly in legal operations, project management, alternative legal services, and talent management. And I'm going on 20 years of being in this business. So it's been a pleasure, and I'm so excited to be here.
Well, that's great, Amber. And, I want to start with a really big bucket, financial services. How are they evolving their legal and compliance strategies?
Yes, the industry has certainly faced some complex and evolving regulatory changes and in a complicated environment. And so they've been doing this in a couple of different ways. One is just the expansion of the legal and compliance function, really from a sheer headcount standpoint. They just need more people to participate and support the function. And then the increased collaboration between legal and compliance. In large financial institutions, this can often be separate departments or functions, but they really have to work hand in hand. They also need to be able to be more proactive in managing risks. And so for a long time, compliance and legal, to some extent, has been reactive to issues and problems that arise. But right now, being much more strategic and predictive in their operations and really being a part of the day-to-day business functions. And as many in this industry know, a strong compliance function really is a competitive advantage in the business and in this marketplace. And then lastly, technology, which obviously we're all talking about a lot, but particularly the rise of generative AI and the ability to be able to use AI to streamline certain processes, improve monitoring capabilities, reduce errors with manual tasks. These are the types of things that technology can really help support in both legal and compliance to make them more effective and efficient in how they're running their operations.
Well, that's great insight. And maybe I'd like to dive a little deeper in and around this technology piece. Obviously, banks and quite frankly, any regulated industry, and I know you work a lot just generally within the regulated industry, just not the finance services, they're always looking at effective ways to reduce risk, manage costs, get through voluminous amounts of data. So how does this technology play in the advancement of AI work hand in hand with maybe some of the legal outsourcing, post-sourcing work that you're doing for your clients?
Yeah, it's a great follow-up question. And there's a couple of things that legal outsourcing can do to help with the operations and the efficiencies, particularly in legal and compliance. One is that expertise on demand. So you're not always going to have the expertise you need in-house readily available to you. And so having these external partners can help you with tech challenges, complex regulatory issues, or even if you're entering a new market and you have some need to become familiar with local laws, rules, or regulations. There's also the cost efficiency component to it. Partnering with outsourcing companies or alternative legal service providers can really give a competitive advantage to be able to not only access what you need from a technology and expertise perspective, but it also gives you options when it comes to how you're spending those budgets, which continue, to be tight in the marketplace. Additionally, having strong frameworks around your compliance, regulatory, and technology functions is really important and can be incredibly difficult to keep up with as it changes so rapidly in today's environment. So, partnering with these outsourced and experts in legal services can give you access to industry information, also keep you ahead of the ever-changing environment. And then lastly, just the scalability and flexibility that you get from your outsourcing partners to be able to ramp up and ramp down so quickly, which can really be a challenge when you're trying to do those types of functions internally within a large organization.
Well, that's very interesting. And so you think about the global nature of Protiviti, right? And not only within legal consulting, but within risk and compliance, technology, et cetera. I know Protiviti is in over 25 markets around the world, 10,000 plus consultants. And so as you're working with many of your clients, how best do you handle sort of right sizing and creating efficiencies?
Well, and it does come back to having those really great partners with work that can and sometimes should be outsourced to an alternative legal service provider. Think of those types of functions that are very voluminous or manual in nature. Regulatory compliance in and of itself can be very voluminous. And so partnering with outside firms to be able to understand whether it's the changing landscape, how your competitors might be tackling certain issues or challenges can really keep you abreast of the business and what's happening. Contracts management is another function that can tend to be very voluminous and complicated, but also poses quite a bit of risk if not managed effectively. So contracts management can be a great thing to partner with outsource or outside firms on. Litigation support is another one, and arguably one that's been outsourced probably for the longest period of time, but that continues to be a great way to manage through e-discovery, investigations, fraud, forensics, particularly with the amount of data we all create these days and being able to manage through that. Legal research, obviously compliance requires a tremendous amount of legal research, and that can be very time consuming on your in-house lawyers or your in-house staff. And so partnering with an alternative legal service provider, an outsourced firm to really support that function. And then data protection and privacy. That's probably another big one. As we all know, those laws and rules continue to change and can be very difficult to keep up with. And so there are plenty of experts that are available, likely inside and outside of a bank, but leveraging all of those resources to really create the most efficiency in-house and, again, manage cost and the flexibility to be able to scale up and down. So those are probably the big key areas.
Well, those are fantastic insights, Amber, and we're getting close to the end of this podcast. We could keep going probably for an hour or two, and so I definitely want to have you back another time for a deeper dive in a couple of these topics. But for our viewers out there, in particular, in-house counsel, the legal operations specialists within financial institutions or the regulated industry, if there was one or two tips that you wanted to leave our listeners with, what would those be today?
I think the first tip is that solving or approaching a problem or challenge is a collaborative effort. Oftentimes, departments and groups like to challenge or like to take on tasks or challenges on their own. But as we were talking about the collaboration between legal and compliance or legal and technology or finance, just we need to work with so many business partners to solve these complex challenges. Would be number one. And then number two is really understanding what's available to you to tackle your day-to-day challenges, not only internally, like I mentioned with the collaboration, but the amount of partners and resources outside of your organization that are available, whether that's just getting some thought leadership or information, or really looking to say, hey, maybe an outside partner is the right answer to tackle this challenge versus trying to take it on alone. So I think it's really about that collaboration piece to tackle these complex challenges that we continue to face in the market.
That's awesome. Well, can't thank you enough for being with us today on the podcast. I know that our viewers will certainly gain a lot of information from what you've shared. Again, for all those listening and watching, thank you for joining Protiviti's Legal Perspectives podcast series.
Thank you for listening today. Find other episodes of Protiviti Legal Perspectives on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast content. And to learn more about Protiviti's legal consulting services, visit protiviti.com.